Welcome to the BOLO podcast, where we bring you insightful discussions on all things related to Black business, leadership and current affairs. Proudly brought to you in association with Camden Council, our aim is to shed light on matters concerning London, the UK and their impact across the diaspora. Join us as we delve into the inspiring stories of the people on the ground, creating dreams and seizing opportunities, paving the way for a brighter future. We also engage with decision makers who play a vital role in shaping policies, ensuring a conducive environment for the growth and success of Black business. Thanks for tuning in. Stay connected, stay informed, and together, let's make a difference.
So, my name is Alex Emiga-Pope,
I like that.
co-founder of Black Owned London, and I'll let the other co-founder introduce himself.
I am Martin Wilson, co-founder of Black Owned London. I'm just happy to be here, to be honest. I'm only joking, but no. I love what we do, and as Alex has already pointed out very succinctly, we're here to affect the economic landscape, and one of the ways that we can do that is by shining a light and speaking to those who influence that.
Amazing. We're going to let our guests introduce themselves and let us know what they do, their roles.
Who's going first? I'll go first. Okay, my name's Jenny Stoute. So I run an actual athletics business. So we look after maybe, I think, 80 athletes around the world. I was an Olympian, and then I was also a gladiator rebel on the TV hit show. That's me.
Amazing.
Wow. I mean, good company, good presence. In fact, my cousin was a gladiator.
Oh, really? Who's
back in the day. So I can't remember what his gladiator name was, but his name is Micah.
Micah?
Micah Hudson is his name.
Oh, right.
Based in the Midlands, and he was a gladiator back in the sort of the 90s.
Oh, right. Okay. Very small. Very small.
Yeah. So I'm Zerritha Brown. I am the head of culture at Camden Council. And my background is culture. I'm a cultural producer, but also I've been working in local government and arts policy, arts management for about 20 odd years. I worked at the Arts Council, so I see my role also as an arts leader as well as a cultural producer as well.
Oh, cool.
Amazing. And I guess we've got two different sectors going on, and from a business perspective, it would be good to understand just sort of a real summarize of kind of what is your day to day, what are your roles and responsibilities within your particular business and your roles.
Oh.
So as a head of culture, so I'm still going to say I'm new. I joined Camden in September last year. So the head of culture role is quite a new role, and the role really was created to kind of bring cultural opportunities to the borough, and also use our role, so the council's role in public realm and land ownership. How do we activate public spaces? How do we bring communities together? So on a day-to-day, my role, or our department's role, is three broad areas. We're looking at how are we supporting culture and creativity and the economy. We're looking at our role in terms of public spaces and how do we use that space to bring the community together. And we're also looking at learning, so looking at young people, talent pipelines, how are we using our role to be able to bring about those changes.
Okay.
Amazing.
So yeah, and so my role is probably slightly different on the other side of it, whereas that we look after quite a number of athletes, and so we actually manage them and everything that they do in terms of their races, their marketing, and also to a big degree, I'm almost like a second parent. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of negotiations in terms of how they see themselves, what they want to achieve out of life, how to better themselves in terms of how they think. The decision-making process. So I spend a lot of time doing that, and sort of like, a lot of the youngsters that come in have, incredibly high hopes and where they want to go, but there's always these garden rules of how you get there, and it's showing them how that they can be as successful as possible with the game change that they've stepped into, and me helping them to not only have a great life within the sporting area, but also when they finish track and field.
Amazing. And I guess what people will be definitely interested in is how you got to this space, because now, you know, you are leaders in your various fields. And so just summarize the journey that was.
Especially your journeys in terms of not just necessarily work as a space, but just a bit about your backgrounds and then how you entered the space, things that you've got to this point as well. Because we want to know the people behind the situation. It is a business podcast, but we need to know a little bit about yourself.
I'll say, I mean, look, I'll say that, you know, if I start off, I'll just say that my journey's been quite a crazy one, because I actually work with, you know, my ex, who's the father of my children. So he started, when John and I finished track and field, we were both looking for something to do, and I was, you know, just come out of Gladiators, and John was approached to start a sporting agency, but he had no office background whatsoever. And we were given an opportunity. We were given, I think, probably maybe, I don't know, it was £100,000 to actually make a difference within 2 years. Now, John and I could have literally just said to ourselves, okay, look, you know, let's just take one day by a time and just let the money go. But in our heads, we were thinking, no, we've got this. We've got, you know, we weren't getting paid monthly at all. We were getting paid just expenses for 2 years. So this money was basically just used to build the company. So we put our heads down and we worked solidly for about 2-3 years on basically nothing but our own savings to try and get this company to work. Because for myself and John, we thought that because we already know about this industry, and you know, we're looking at each other and we're thinking, okay, you know, no one could do it better than ourselves. So we worked really closely, and we've been working together for 24 years. You know, I mean, yes, you know, we've broken up in the meantime, and he's remarried. I've got my partner, but our girls are in track and field. But we have still kept our work ethic together because we trust each other.
Yeah.
And I think that as a Black couple, family, you know, our girls are in track and field. I think one of the major things that have come out of the fact that we've worked so closely together, that we've stayed together. Yeah. And we've produced to show that everybody else, including our girls as well, that you can work together regardless whether, you know, there's a split or not a split or whatever. But it did take us a long time to get there. And our work ethic has always been completely solid, 100%. Like, we work hard, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we know that's the only way that we can get to where we want to be. And you know, we came into a market that was saturated. So we had no choice but to make it work. And that's what we did.
Amazing. That's amazing.
With the ex. Everyone always says it. They're like, how are the two of you working? I'm like, because I am an amazing woman. That is why we're working together.
So I guess my journey's slightly different. So I was born into, I guess, sort of music, creativity. My dad is a musician. He's a reggae musician. And he actually came from Jamaica in 1971. He was sent to the UK by the Jamaican government to promote reggae music. It was when Double Barrel went to #1 with Dave and Ansel.
Oh, wow. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember those.
He came as part of that band. And that was always his dream. In Jamaica, my grandfather wanted him to train as a welder. And he was just like, no, music is what I want to do. And my grandfather said to him, okay, if you're going to step away from the family trade, you need to basically, you know that you can eat from music. And he said, well, I will. And he's self-taught guitarist, and then came to the UK. Now, when he came to the UK, and as we know how the music business can be volatile, 1 minute everyone loves you, the next minute the opportunities are gone. Yeah. And in that case, with that and the way that reggae music was moving at the time, the hopes and dreams that he had when he came here quickly evaporated, and he had two choices. The choice was to go back to Jamaica, and he didn't want to do that because he knew that, you know, he'd be criticised for turning his back on the trade, or stay in the UK and make a life for himself from music. So music has always been there in our lives, in my dad's life. And when I had always known that I wanted to have something to do with the performing arts, so things like, you know, I trained as a gymnast very, very, you know, like 6, 7. Yeah. When Fame came on, I always used to get my leotard on,
jump over there,
because I was like, I'm gonna be
this is me.
This is me. And then one day, someone there was music lessons at school, and someone came in and they were like, promoting like the violin and the cello and the viola. And I don't know what it was about the violin, but I just fell in love with it. And I came home to
Wow.
my dad and I said, I want to learn to play the violin, knowing it was going to make him happy because he's a musician. All I'd ever seen him do was play the guitar. I was always in and out of studios. And he said to me, if you're going to do this, you take it serious. I don't want you to pick it up and drop it down. That's what my kids do, pick up things and drop them down. I want you to pick it up, and I want you, if I'm going to invest in this, you're going to do it. And I said, I will. And I did. I played the violin for 10 years.
Oh, beautiful.
And I left it because the sector was, and still in a way is not moved forward with the times. It's still very white. It's still very middle class. But I took it to as far as I wanted to take it to. But during that journey, I did performing arts as well, so I did get to do my famous school bit.
Yeah.
And then I went on, I trained and I did music technology because I wanted to work in sound engineering. But, bumps and twists, you kind of, you learn, you grow, you move, you decide where you want your path to be. And I got to sort of the end of university and realised that actually my passion probably wasn't in commercial and trying to make money. It was around how do I use my experience as being the only black kid in the room in classical music as an example. How do I take that and look at how I work in a community setting around access? And that's where my journey kind of went from then.
Wow.
Amazing. One thing that actually touched upon, and if we're going to dive straight into that, but you both seem to be very clued into development and giving back, and it's almost the last touching point that you had. Looking at, I suppose, your industry separately, what is it that you feel is kind of essential moving forward for opportunities to be given, or for more opportunities or more opportunistic pathways to open for the youth within athletics or within management of athletes, and within developing the cultures, or developing culture within a borough setting?
I mean, if I talk in terms of athletics wise, I'll probably use my children as an analogy because, Alicia just got her first in her degree, and Renee, 17, who's has been signed with a Nike, and she's now running for GB. I think that one of the things that, in terms of how I have always been in myself, and I come from a single parent family, and I wasn't given everything straight away. I've just been a hard worker. Is that one of the things that I try to instill all the time is just about work ethic, and it's about judgment about who you are, and in your character. And for me, and I've had these conversations, with Martin, and a few times about how I see myself as a black person within this world or industry, and I've never really used that as a barrier for me, because I always felt like if I want something, even if I have to graft for it, I will eventually get it at some stage, because I'm a real believer that everybody has their moment and their time, but it's when and how that it's given. And I've tried to instill that a lot in my girls, and also in terms of the athletes, that when they're coming through. And, track and field is predominantly black. And a lot of the kids that when they come in, yes, it's all starry eyes about, having all the, fast cars and, money and all the labels and that sort of stuff. But we try to get them to understand that, yes, this could be a really short window of making money, but also it's what are you going to do after you've made the money? Who are the connections that you're going to make and build within this 5 or 6 years or 10 years that you have in track and field? Because, track and field a bit, for me, I always say it's a bit like an open prison, because you're kind of like, you're cocooned in one area and you live a life so solidly, and you're traveling all over the world, you're going everywhere, blah, blah, blah. But then before you know it, your time's up. And then when your time's up, that's when you actually start looking at yourself. And then by then, if you haven't made the connections, the door becomes open quickly, very widely, and there's no one around. So one of the things that we try to do, and we try to almost, certainly tell them every single time, especially the latter years of their life, in track and field is start opening doors, start, communicating with people, start understanding where you are. And I don't necessarily preach to them about, okay, because you're black, you've got to work even harder, you've got to push, you've got to put that. It's all about what they've instilled and how they've grown within themselves and the strength that they've got. So I would look at that and their personality, and I will push that more than anything. And then use the same analogy that when you work hard and you cross the line first, people are going to see you anyway, regardless. And that's how I've always pushed everybody in terms of that way.
Within that, just to sort of touch on what Alex is also trying to say is, did representation matter for you coming through? Because obviously you went, as you said, the sport itself was predominantly black, but those who run the sport, those who manage the sport, aren't necessarily so.
No, and
so
yeah.
In terms of yourself and John taking that leap from athlete to agency and sports management aspects, if you've got people coming through, it's the idea of do you believe things like representation matters?
Do you know it's really
matter for you?
yeah.
How and in that sense of things.
Do you know it's really quite weird because when John and I first started the company, we found it really difficult to get a lot of the black coaches to bring their athletes to us. Like we found it, to me, I was like, okay, all right, guys, myself and John, we've been doing track and field all these years. Like, us. So why wouldn't you bring your athletes to us? We had to actually bring a white person into the business so that we could get that diversity. And it wasn't, and it wasn't necessarily because white people wouldn't come to us. It was because our black owned coaches weren't bringing the athletes to us, because the first thing in their mind is like, oh, well, why are we going to look after you guys? You need to look after us. And I'm like, hold on a second. They're like, yeah, well, give us a, you do us a favor. And I'll be like, okay, I'll do you a favor. You give me half of your wage at the end of the month, and then I'll do you a favor.
Yeah.
But then it never works like that. And the thing that I found really difficult was like, why wouldn't we back each other? Yeah. Why was it so difficult for them to actually back myself and John?
The expectations.
But then you'd give it to somebody else around the door, around the corner that you don't even know. You don't even know. And we found it really, really telling in terms of how people saw us. Because was it because of the fact that they were afraid or didn't like the idea that there was two black people fronting this business, and that in order for them to make it work or that we were going to get anything, we had to make it more diverse. Like we had to bring someone in the middle. And I found that so bizarre. But then once we did that, more athletes started coming on board.
Validation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was about to say that.
But it's nuts.
Yeah,
it's absolutely nuts.
Unfortunately, that's we can delve into that all day long if you want to, in terms of things like programming and all that kind of stuff that makes us believe. We end up repeating our own negative stereotypes and negative narratives and using them on ourselves, and not realizing that we're doing so, but thinking it's some form of camaraderie when actually it's completely negative. So it's the idea that we should get each other, so you should do me a favor. But how does that work?
Yeah,
And as we've had with other guests, but like to run a successful business, I can't. If I do your favors, business goes bust.
100%.
And then hilariously, I then fit the stereotype and the statistic.
Yeah.
Which is that we can't run a business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah, because we used to be called. Yeah, we would always be called like Oreo cookies and stuff like that from our own people. This is because we weren't black enough, and this is the thing that just always drives me crazy. Like, what is black enough? What is supposed to be black enough? Am I meant to be like unsuccessful? Am I, is this what it is you're trying to say? Yeah. And this is coming from our own friends that know us, and were literally not backing us, and that's what I found really difficult at first for myself and John, is to understand how people were seeing us, but more of our own community was seeing us rather than individuals on the outside, and we just had to keep on pushing forward. But then once we got the other jigsaw puzzle in the middle, it made life easy.
That's hilarious.
And it's just, it's crazy. Yeah, it's literally crazy.
It's a very interesting space.
But and I think that's, as we said, but with yourself, Zerritha, how have you found in terms of your journey, and then looking back from your situation now as well, and then thinking, okay, so what advice obviously would you pass on to others? And are things different from when you started? And if they're not, what do you think needs to change, and what advice can you give to those coming through?
God, there's so much in there.
yeah. That's the point. That's the point. But I want you, that's what we want you to say these things. We want you to share these things because it's not a small subject at all. You know what I mean? But
I mean, I think that question about Black enough is something that resonated with me a lot growing up. I grew up in Pinner, which if you know in Pinner is Harrow, and back then it was a very sort of white middle class area. And so going to music school and playing the violin and being one of the only black kids there, when I went back to like my friends in Brent, family in Brent, I'd always be like the odd one out because you play the violin, and what black people play the violin. It was this whole thing.
Yeah.
Even down to the way that I speak as well.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
well spoken,
Yeah.
apparently. You know, you're not quite black enough. And it was always like that. And it was interesting actually when on my journey, so as I mentioned, I worked at the Arts Council for 7 years. And my brother is 7 years younger than me. And I will never forget, like, so he was doing his thing sort of late teens, which was just, you know, hanging out with the man them, not really kind of being on a path. And me saying to him, like, what do you want to do with your life? And, you know, him having some people around him that were just had particular views. Yeah. And I said to him, look, you need to come in to work with me and just, like, you know, just do some work experience, just do something. And I remember we had as a project I was working on called Creative Partnerships, which was around creativity and education. And we were working predominantly with the boroughs of Brent, Ealing and Hammersmith and Fulham. And as a small team, we were really, our focus was on looking at the demographics in those areas and making sure that artists that we were taking into the space were representative of that demographic. Right. So where we were working with Brent, as an example, we would make sure we were sending black male artists into the space. And that was coming from the young people as well. So I remember we had our office in Shepherd's Bush. My brother came in and he said he didn't even recognise me. He said, I walked past and I just saw this black girl looking at the desk, looking stush. And then I walked back and I realised it was you. And I was like, well, why was I looking stush? Because I was working? Because I was like what do you want me to do? So anyway, he came in, he did like a couple of weeks of work experience with us, just coming to events and just being in the space, just coming, sitting in meetings. That moment has completely changed his whole life. He now is a black business owner.
There you go.
He puts it back to, he will always say, you know what, you were the one that kind of took me, showed me how to operate in a different way. Yeah. And I was like, all that time when you were laughing at me, calling me, you know,
back then, yeah.
Now you walk in those, you know, and he said, well, yeah, like you had to show me. So, you know, that was a little bit of me wanting to kind of talk about like this idea of not being black enough, because we know that being black isn't a monolith. And so when it comes to your own people, it's even more hurtful. When it comes from family, it's hurtful until they step into that lens and like, actually, this is where you know, you're right. There's something in this. But my like the arts and culture sector is changing.
Okay.
But in my journey, it wasn't. You know, when I worked at the Arts Council, it was very much like the art form departments were white middle class, and the support services were not. That's where you would find, like, you know, the diversity, HR, payroll. You know, that's where you'll find or children.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
that's where you find the black people working. But within that, there were a couple of shining lights of people that had broken through. So Hilary Carty, she's the director of Claw Leadership now. But when I worked at the Arts Council, she was director of dance. To see this black woman being the director of that art form, that for me, so Hilary's a dear friend of mine now. But that was like, this is where I want to be. But role models like that helped push me. Delia Barker, who is managing director of Brixton House now, she was in the dance department. These are like, you know, we call ourselves like the black superhero team. But these were the ladies that kind of really helped me realise that, you know, there's not many of us, but there is a way to sort of push through. I'm the head of culture at Camden Council, as I said. Across London, there are not many head of culture roles, but of them, I think I'm the only black woman that is leading a culture department. I don't think there were really black men. And so for me, that's a massive thing for me. And at times, there's been like a bit of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, of course.
But equally, I really feel that this is a privilege for me to be in this role, and I'm not going to be here forever. So my part of my succession planning is, how am I looking and supporting that next generation, and how am I being visible enough for people to see that?
And it's so interesting actually listening to you in terms of, you know, understanding the cultural role of how you see yourself. Whereas for me, as an athlete, black woman, I've never really seen myself in that kind of thing where I've had to prove myself because of my color or whatever. I think that because of maybe the way in which I've grown within myself, like I said, come from a single parent, council, living with social workers. I've always had this sort of like work ethic in me where I want to keep pushing myself and becoming the best. And whenever anyone said anything to me that I thought that was making me take a step back, I never really looked at colour. I just looked at my ability. And I've always looked at my ability. I've never looked at anybody ever thinking, well, am I going to get it because I'm black, or am I not going to get it because I'm black? Everything I've done has been through my ability. And if I've gone and got something and it hasn't worked for me, I've never necessarily turned around and said to myself, oh, I didn't get it because I was black, or I didn't get it because of that. And I think the reason why I kind of like didn't look in that type of area is because there's enough negativity going out. I don't need to make myself feel negative about who I am, because I'm actually really glad and loving the fact that I am a black woman. So if someone doesn't want me, then I'll find someone who does. And that's how I've always been, and that's how I've always pushed myself, and hopefully kind of instill the same thing in my girls. Whereas, obviously you do get areas where sometimes, I started modelling now at this age and grey hair and everything, and I'll go for certain jobs and they don't know how to do my hair. Some of the makeup's not really done well, and at first I was really conscious about it, but now I'm like, okay, look, I'll just help them a little bit. I'll bring my own little headscarf and, the gel and all that sort of stuff, because I'm not expecting them to know everything. And so, but at the end of it, I need to shine and look the best I can. So I'm just going to help myself. And that's how I've always looked at it.
It's amazing.
I think there's a lot to be said in that, though. I think as well with some of the other guests we've had on as well, it's interesting because I think actually it's a shared mentality. So a lot of what you've just said there in terms of, you didn't let that hold you back. I think it's the case for all people who've pushed on in their field. It's just about how you feel about it in the time. But actually, yourself, Zerritha, both of you have, if something has been holding you back, it hasn't made you go, well, I'm going to give up, or you haven't used it as a reason not to pursue something.
Yeah.
I think that's something I feel like is definitely familiar or common with everyone who's a leader in the industry, a black person in the leader in the industry. I don't want to sound harsh, but it's sort of not giving into that victimhood of it. But at the same time, you still have to acknowledge
100%.
these things exist, which I can't, we can't sort of move away from. But the victimhood aspect is something that I think people sometimes don't like to engage with or accept or acknowledge. But I think there is an aspect of it. But then, obviously, unfortunately, when you start to talk about victimhood, there's others that jump on the bandwagon of, well, exactly. Do you know what I mean? Just work hard and you'll get everything you want. And it's a fine balance.
No, of course. I think so too.
The realities of some things that actually have been made very difficult, then you run the risk of not being able to educate and change the space because you just say, well, just work hard for it. And actually,
it doesn't always work that.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and I think that back in my day, we'd go back way back in the 70s and 80s. I think that, opportunities were a lot easier to get. If I'm perfectly honest, because, John and I didn't have a degree when we started our business. We went straight from track and field, had our O levels and A levels, but went straight into a business. But we had work, ethics, and that's the thing that got us to where we are. I don't know if you could do that now because everybody's looking for something different. But if I look at my girls, they went private school. They've got a different sector of individuals. One's has her idea of how she sees life, and the other one's got her idea of how she sees life. But the one thing that they both have is complete and 100% work ethic, because they have an understanding that it doesn't really matter. Like, the fact is that you are gonna meet people that are not always going to be on your side. But if you've got that strength of character within yourself, then you'll overlook and you'll go in another direction to find what it is that you want, because it shouldn't be made that easy all the time. And sometimes it is our environment. Like, our environment can dictate a lot of where you go and where you don't go. And I had this. I know I was chatting to a friend of mine the other day when we was talking about what made me come from, all of my friends going out, partying, smoking weed, they were all doing their thing, blah 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 blah, and it wasn't for me, but I don't know what changed my mind at 17, 18 years old to go into sports when all my friends were partying, going out and having fun. And when I've gone back to see them, it's almost like going back in time because they're still there.
Yeah.
They're still there.
Stuck in the tent.
And the thing is, it's because my family didn't have what I've got now or what my children have got now. And there wasn't social media, so I couldn't see what was going on in the world. But I had a difference of opinion about where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And I had a difference of opinion of how hard I had to work to get there. And I think that's the thing that changed the difference between me and somebody else.
No, 100%.
And that's the bit that I feel that.
But I think as well, you guys have to accept you're all trailblazers in your
Yeah.
industry, and that's a great thing. It all should be celebrated. Don't be embarrassed by it. But you guys are trailblazers, but then the idea is, what you want is as you said, Zerritha says, it's that visual
Yes.
of I've been a trailblazer. So what we don't want is a repeat of everyone trying to be a trailblazer.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
sense of it should then become commonplace.
Yes.
if that makes sense. So it shouldn't have to be, I pushed through things that were unexpected and then get someone else to do exactly the same thing because then you've made no progress. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That means they got to fight the same fight over and over and over again. Same way if you talk about your children, Renee and Alicia, the fact is their lifestyle is completely different to your own. But that's because of what you've been able to do.
Yeah.
So therefore, they'll be able to push on from there. So the idea is that we keep doing this so that rather than having to work from here all the way up to here, someone can start working from here and then achieve even more than the last did. And they work from here and they achieve even more from the last did. And then we change narratives, perceptions, all of these things go out the window through the fact that we've been able to do that through the various narrative changes and but I agree with you work ethic wise. I think that's important. And I think we've said that in a few of the episodes that we're not shying away from work, but it's also about the idea of
opportunity.
Of changing mindsets, changing narratives, but by doing that through example. And that's I think sometimes you may not even realize that you're an example.
Yeah.
You'll be thinking about your own journey and forgetting that actually people are watching you. And even in myself, in my life, in my career, I did a sort of interview for a friend. And I thought it would have no impact on anyone, just like a little thing, whatever. But then, I had 2 or 3 people message me and said, I heard your story. And it was amazing. It pushed me to continue on to do my degree and whatever.
Yeah.
And it was that moment I realized that nothing is too small and nothing, and you realize actually how much of a change you can make for someone just by visually being an example of where they want to be.
Yeah.
And as you talked about that, seeing the director at the time of dance and what that did to you. Do you know what I mean? It's because it's a constant battle. Do you know what I mean? You don't just, it's not like I got to here and that's it. If you keep pushing and you start to see examples of yourself, it takes away from the idea that this is going to be impossible. It gives you motivation and confidence, I think, personally.
Do you know, it's only probably up until about 5 years ago that I feel that I fully sort of stepped into my space and owned it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
Yeah.
5 years ago, I was still just like trying to put my head down and hope that at some point someone will give me the job that I've applied for 10 times and been told you're not quite right for it yet.
Yeah.
And I think once I worked on the Borough of Culture programme, and one of the programmes that we did as part of that was telling a story of Brent's reggae history and being able to connect that back to Jamaica. But at the heart of that, really put the community and platform community voices. And I think it was at that point that I really understood my role, my privilege in working for a local authority, in being able to open the doors and provide a space for a community that hadn't been heard. And once I realised that, I was like, I'm not letting go of this. This is a space that I feel that I can make a difference and change.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
No, go for it.
No, I was just saying there's actually a great caveat to talking about how culture is actually recognised in London from your perspective, because, we've got certain stats like, 10 million pounds is generated every hour by London's creative industry. It's the number 1 Googled city in the world. But within that space, within that, massive, great stat, there's obviously Black contribution in that and Black creative contribution. So how, if at all, is that recognised within the council, and how have they looked to invest and push that to the forefront and at least recognise it?
Do they recognise it?
Do they recognise it?
It's a sudden assumption.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
literally.
mean, I think, if we're getting into council speak, that sits across, I guess, two different departments. That's myself as head of culture in terms of identifying opportunities, working with businesses, kind of spotlighting. And then the other sits within the Regeneration Economic and Investment team. And so part of that conversation is around how we as a local authority team that up and how we're working together more closely to be able to, if you say, re-identify, then pass this information over to colleagues in Regen to be able to support that. And I believe some of that work is already happening, as you know, through the work that yourselves are involved in, but definitely like through Black History Season, and not that it's only Black History Season, but Black History Season allows us to kind of take stock and really think about, okay, so as well as celebrating, what are we actually doing in terms of supporting the culture and creative and the Black culture and creative economy as well? And I think more work needs to be done in kind of identifying where those businesses are in the borough, and how we also then are able to support them.
Amazing. And in terms of, I suppose, the like a vision, like if there was something that you were working towards as a department, as to create, what would that kind of look like, I suppose?
I mean, for me, I think it is about really trying to understand Camden's Black community, and look at how we celebrate that and also provide opportunities as well to grow businesses. If you take the recent Windrush 75 work that we've just done,
Amazing.
when I came into Camden, I didn't really know much about Camden's Windrush history. It's not because it isn't there, it's because
It was never told.
it wasn't ever told.
Yeah.
Whereas other boroughs, Brent, Lambeth, Hackney, they have big Windrush communities, and there are big stories that are told around, the borough they arrived in, or the borough that had, hospitals, or the borough that had, the TFL. But in Camden, it's more, unless you really go looking for it, you're not going to see it. So that was the first thing I did when I came to Camden, was thinking about, well, what is the story here? And in kind of doing, a little bit, it's not that hard to find, a little bit of research, it was there. And so in planning the Windrush programme, I really wanted to use that Windrush opportunity, the 75th opportunity, for Camden to shout about, the pioneers, but also look to the future. A couple of the things that we did, or one of the things that we did that I'm really proud of, is that we did a festival in a park in Kentish Town, Talaker Town Green.
Yeah.
Now, when I joined and I said, I'd like to do an outdoor festival, I was repeatedly told, Camden doesn't deliver its own outdoor festivals. And I said, okay, I'd like to do a festival. And I'd like to do it in Talaker Town Green. And then I was again told, it's probably not, it's a good space to do it. And the reason why I wanted to do it in Talaker, Kentish Town, is because as part of my research, I found out that is where the majority of the Caribbean community arrived and settled in Camden, was in Kentish Town, including my own grandfather. So it felt really fitting to do a celebration in that park. And that park was also a bomb site that was campaigned to be turned into a park by a guy called Jerry Williams, who went on to be Camden's first Black mayor. So there was a real sort of cultural significance.
Amazing.
And I'd been told it would never been done before, and it would be difficult to do. And yes, it was difficult to do, but we did it.
Yeah.
And what it has done is really opened up that conversation for how are we celebrating communities. Obviously the Black Caribbean community, but wider. How do we use that to springboard off having something annually? And I'm really proud that we as a team kind of fought and pushed and created that space and really started to open up these conversations now that we can build on.
Yeah, amazing.
I was going to say, how do you deal with the fact that it's so a lot? Maybe I'm wrong when I say this, but I guess a lot of the work you do is not as easily measurable as something as simple as, we spent X, we made X. Do you know what I mean? That's simple business sort of stuff. Something you in the cultural space isn't always simply about figures. And I guess, how is that, or your experience? How have you found? How do people measure that, and how do you feel like, or how do you feel people respond to this was a success? How do you get people to see that was a success in open?
It's a really good question, and it's a question within the culture sector, because a lot of the measurements is bums on seat.
Okay, that's what they use.
Bums on seat is probably not always an indication of whether a project was good or not.
Yeah.
There is a quantitative and the qualitative evaluation, and I think they both have their place. But I actually am an advocate for the qualitative, because you can spend £1,000 and one person turns up to a thing. Quantitatively, that's not good business, right?
Yeah.
Qualitatively, if that has changed one person's life from a
yeah,
path
of
that they
course,
were on,
of course.
that is more than more than its weight in gold. So going back to how we've measured Windrush, we've had we're still doing that, but we're measuring it by attendance. We're also measuring it around paid positions. So how many people did we bring in? How many artists, producers, creatives, young people got employment through it, because that's a good measure. That every time we do a program, I want to look at how are we, like, from the designers, like particularly with Windrush, I wanted it to be a black design team that worked on it. When I did Brent 2020 and we did No Base on My Home, it was a black production company that I got in. So really looking at, if we're looking at a particular theme, a diasporic theme, that we're making sure the teams we're building around are representative as well. But also, it's just through people coming back and saying
They've had a good time or something.
this was amazing. Amazing. We've had a letter go in the CNJ where someone has said, we want this every year. With the amount of texts that we've had, all of this is collated in terms of that qualitative response that we're getting. And I think for local councils, it's got to be the both. It's got to be and particularly Camden, we listen to what the community say and value. So both the how many people attended and that feedback really helped shape the need going forward.
Okay.
No,
Very interesting.
I mean, I've witnessed firsthand the literally instant impact that when we had David Olusoga talking about Lord Pitt, and we had some school kids literally sitting down, and it started off with gentle head nods. But as they understood more and more about his story, they just got more and more vibrant, and with big smiles on their faces, and that connection with historic identity and being able to feed off. I said we sometimes we don't really acknowledge those that came before us, but to actually have the knowledge to be able to acknowledge that gives a lot of weight, and I think that's one of those aspects that is really hard to quantify, but in situ you can see the impact that's being made. So it's great that you create these events that allow for people, maybe even from a decision-making perspective, to go in and experience it, to understand the value of what's being done, and that's great. We are heading towards the close of.
That's all right.
That is already.
Yeah.
But do you know what? Do you know what I want to actually say is because it's really bizarre, because the thing is that I'm listening to everything that everyone's saying, and if I was to look at myself and John as black couple in a business, I've never really looked at how people have looked at us.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at them, and I'm listening to the conversations that are having, and wondering to myself, do John and I put ourselves out more as a black fronted business, or do we continue doing what we're doing now? How do we make an impact on other individuals that want to come into the business sector?
Absolutely.
Because I've never really thought about it. Because I've just gone on. I've just gone on. I've just gone on. I've just gone on, and I've never really thought about, are these young black kids looking at myself and John and thinking, oh yeah, they can run a business or not run a business. What's it like?
Yeah.
By the way,
what do we have to do in order to make that happen? Do we have to go out and talk to more individuals? Because we don't. We just work. That's what we do. We just work.
Which is still important.
Yes.
It's not that even if you don't feel like you're engaging enough, you're still doing something by being an example.
Yeah.
But I think as well, we had episode just gone, and one of the guests there was like, she was adamant. She was like, I think mentorship, we should, amongst the black community, we should make mentorship mandatory. and everyone should have someone they're mentoring at one point at any given time, which I thought was an amazing idea. And I was like, the logistics of it might not be as simple, but it's an amazing idea. But the reason why I'm saying that, for instance, is that's the funny thing, because most people don't start, if we're talking about a business, most people don't start a business going, I'm going to show everyone and every black person that we can own a business. It's more the passion you have for what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then you become the example. And the fact that you're having this conversation internally, like, are we doing enough? Actually, should we? And it's the beauty of it is you guys are working extremely hard.
Yeah.
But you don't realize the impact you're having.
Yeah.
And there will be athletes, even if I use athletes, for example, who when they finish their career would have looked around, if we're being honest about the athletic scene in that sense, apart from a few of the American agencies, generally speaking,
There's no black.
There's barely any black people there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I, for one, don't enjoy some aspects because there's, if we're being honest, there's no cultural understanding.
Yeah, no,
no
of course.
cultural empathy. It doesn't exist. And I'm not saying there's masses of room for that within business. You can't be the nice people all the time.
Yeah.
But culturally, you will have some understandings that other people won't. Do you know what I mean? And then you have some young kids who could be as young as 16, 17, 18, putting their lives in the hands of people who, in the nicest way, will just see them as a check.
Yeah, of course,
and
of course.
won't understand anything more to them or more. And I think that's the sad part. But what you guys are doing, what you guys have built, is an example to others. And I think that's why it's amazing that you're thinking about it. But it's actually, and it's tricky because we also, who was that we had on here as well? They were saying things like, we all do these things that you think to yourself, oh, should I put my face on this?
Yeah.
Because it was Dr. Dapper. He was
Dapper,
dentist. He's a dentist, great dentist, amazing dentist, treats a lot of celebrities, an amazing guy. He's there thinking, he's making these decisions like, do I put my black face? And one of his mentors from uni was saying to him, who wasn't black, but who was in favor of him, was like, maybe don't do that, because it might have a negative impact on your business. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he chose to put it there because he was like, it's me. And
Yeah.
and it's like, actually, I'd rather.
you can't run away from it, can you, really?
But I'd rather you come there knowing it's me, and it's my thing, as opposed to me trying to hoodwink my way through business to be like, oops, so you're here now. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a lot for that, as in, because sometimes we think about these things, we're trying to grow a successful business and we worry about the perception. Yeah. And we forget about the other side of perception, the positive side of perception.
Yeah, of course.
We're more and more about the negative, because you're thinking, if I do this, is it going to be this or that? But actually, you forget how many people you influence. And I guarantee you, because you haven't had those conversations and necessarily haven't come to get you, you guys would have inspired a load of people.
Yeah.
A load of people. That's why I said that even the time that some people messaged me, I really didn't think I would inspire anyone. I was like, because that wasn't in my thought process. It was just next thing, get the next thing, do the next thing, do the next thing. And then you don't realize that to someone else, you are a route, a way forward, a beacon to them, to the ideas, because everyone's journey is different. Everyone's journey is different. And someone could be working hard, have massive work ethic, but for whatever reason, due to a number of situations, they think to themselves, maybe it isn't for me. I'll just move. And they see you and they go, do you know what? I can do this. I can keep going. I have to keep going, because actually it is possible. I have to take myself out of that negative mindset and the rest of it. So I love the fact that you're even thinking about it, but that's how the game goes. And like a lot of business owners that we said, not every single one of them has thought about what they're doing to bring the next people through, but actually don't realize that they're doing something that's anyway. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I definitely think everyone should try to do, because representation matters. Yeah, it really does.
Absolutely.
I think it changes the narrative massively eventually, because the same way you talked about how you have black coaches with black athletes hesitating to give you their athletes, I go, once you make that commonplace, we change the narrative. People stop associating that situation or that negative stereotype or negative narrative, and start doing things in a positive manner.
Yeah, of course.
And that's I think that's the most important thing.
If you can't see it, you can't believe it.
Yeah.
I think that's the role that and the power that we underestimate so much. My children's school, the deputy head teacher was a black lady who's just retired, and I went up to her retirement do, and I just said thank you for being visible, and thank you for being there. Like,
it's amazing.
You've been amazing. And she said to me, actually, I think she hadn't really maybe stopped
thought about it.
Yeah. Now that she's leaving,
she now realises,
black parents are coming up to her going, thank you.
a shared empathy. I think Martin pointed out in terms of the understanding. It's an innate understanding because we share such similar experiences in this journey that is outside, well, diaspora in that sense, and it just becomes something that is intrinsically powerful just to see someone that looks like you in other spaces in Africa and in the Caribbean, things that are just absolutely natural for individuals to see people in leadership positions. Every position can be, because it is over there, but over here, such a very specific experience that we have where identity is always in question, and that's where you end up having this what you mentioned it before. What's
Imposter syndrome. Yeah,
exactly that, because it's not the norm.
Yeah.
And I think that's from a mentorship perspective. I guess that something that your department is kind of like looking at in terms of trying to help businesses, or is there or even from a cultural perspective, are there initiatives that help for mentorship, help guide businesses into mentorship, to enable mentorship?
I think so. From a cultural perspective, in terms of businesses, our practice will be working more with artists, designers, etc., etc. So we've set up an artist network, and as part of that artist network is trying to gather people together, so we know who's in the borough. But we also reach out to them as well. We look to put on like quarterly meetups as well. We are also looking at the work that we do around young people as well, and looking at how we are supporting them on their journey, and that could be how we connect them in with the wider cultural sector as well. Something really lovely happened though last week. A couple of weeks ago, we've been doing some roundtables with the culture sector around like just basically the state of the sector, the economy, the world, and kind of trying to do a bit of visioning of what we want the culture sector to look like going forward for Camden. And as part of the last session, we had some young people, year 12s, that came for work experience. And they sat in on the session, and it was really, really lovely just having young people in that space and really basically saying to them, like, you've got my job now. You're in charge. What would it look like for you?
Yeah.
And then, first of all, being a bit like, huh? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be here forever. You definitely can have my job, right?
Yeah.
What would you change?
Yeah.
And so, it was a really, really good session. And anyway, the feedback was they'd done a week worth of work experience, and they'd gone to they'd gone to the Roundhouse as an example. So they all loved their placement or their time at the Roundhouse. But the second place that they really enjoyed was coming to the workshop that we did at Camden. And half of the group said that they would actually like to work in the culture service.
Amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so for me, that little 2 hours that we spent with them
made a big difference.
made a big difference to them thinking. So in answer to your question around the mentoring, it's little things like this that I think kind of helps plant that seed and change that narrative that we can build on.
Yeah,
amazing.
No, of course.
Amazing. When you actually realize when they realize the impact that they can have themselves, that kind of self-empowered. Amazing. So we have a little round of questions.
No, you're confusing two things. So guys,
Martin's always in charge of the end.
As we come towards the end, I'm just going to fire a few things at you. One is called Prove Me Wrong. This section's called Prove Me Wrong, where myself and Alex will be playing devil's advocate, asking our hosts questions close to their heart, giving them the opportunity to navigate the tricky waters of today's whataboutism and the ignorance posted in most comment sections. These are not my personal opinions. These are not things that I personally think. It'll just be one question, and just a chance for you to reply to that question. So as I said, it's not me.
Fight time.
Yeah, before because you guys jump on the table and stuff. Yeah, literally. I have to make sure of that because I respect you guys.
Sarah Barton's going.
Do you know what I mean? But it's these are things that, because it's easy, as you know how things work, the internet works, and the rest of it. People often have very ignorant opinions about stuff, and it's not because they're horrible people, but they just don't know any better, and they throw these opinions out there, and those who don't know better with them jump on the same bandwagon. So I created this section just because I wanted to be in the position of one of those people and see how you'd answer them if they were here. So Zerritha, I'll start with you. So I'd ask you, for instance, why is the arts and culture stuff, why is it even important? Why can't we just take that money and just put it in the hands of some of the working people? She wants to fight me.
Maybe not.
Guys, I'm in Creator's house if you're looking for me. Send help.
How dull would the world be without arts and culture? Like, okay, let's take health, arts and culture in terms of health, physical and mental health. It's one of the key things that we need. And I guess that question around arts and culture is, what is arts and culture? Because in the hands of power, I guess the arts and culture is probably seen as, the traditional art forms, music, dance, theatre,
ballet, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
But actually, arts and culture is much wider than that. We know it's food. We know it's reasoning. We know it's a whole load of things that brings communities together, that opens up dialogue, that brings joy. And so, for me, it's really important that we keep that for health, mental health, community, building communities, but also you need creativity to move the world on, right?
To live, to grow.
Need creative responses to the world. So without that,
what do we look like?
We're going back. We're going backwards. So yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Amazing.
Thank you. And for you, Jen.
Jen.
I would say, black people in general have done pretty well in sport. It's worked out pretty well for them. And I think they should probably be pretty happy with that. And I don't know why there's any need to probably diversify. Why would you want your kids to go beyond that? Why can't they just follow in your footsteps exactly? And other children should just be happy with their lot. Why did you think it was necessary to even go into management? Couldn't you just be happy with the career you had, given the fact that, you're doing better than most black people?
But then, wouldn't that be like I would be dead then under 6 foot?
I
I wouldn't be working. I mean, the thing is, it's so easy. It's so easy to say to everybody, just stand still. Just grab your gold, your pot of gold and sit in there and look at it. But eventually it runs dry. And I just think that as individuals, as human beings, everybody's got to grow. And you have to keep on growing. And you can change yourself every single time in your life. I'm a great advocate to my girls. Always said to them and always say, you don't have to be a certain age to stop. You can keep on reinventing yourself regardless. So it doesn't matter how much money you've got. The first stage of the money that an athlete has should set them up for the next trimester in life. And then when they get to that stage, then look for something else. And I've always said to my girls, I went into management, did the whole gladiator thing, blah, blah, blah. Then decided that, okay, got grey hair now. I'm going to go to modelling. And at first I didn't think I could, but I did. And I've done a lot more. And now, great old age of 58, I actually want to keep doing more. And I want to see how great I can be. So I would say to anyone, that, life is about recreating yourself over and over and over again. What you begin with doesn't mean say that you're going to end up with. And you have to keep on pushing because that's what life's all about.
Good.
Amazing.
And for the last bit, it's a quick fire round. This is the quick fire round. No ifs, buts, or maybes. No long explanations. Just one answer. Don't ask me what I mean. You just have to answer the question. Because everyone's going to say, well, what do you mean? You'll see. So just a bunch of options. Say which one, and I'll just go through a bunch of them. Okay. You're going to try and ask me what I mean. I'm not going to answer. Right?
So Martin.
All right,
so Martin.
So then we'll start with something simple. Beach or city?
Right now, beach. 100% beach.
I love your face. I love people's faces when they think about it. 9 to 5 or 10 to 6?
10 to 6.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll go 9 to 5.
I didn't even finish 6.
I'm an early bird. I'll go 9 to 5. Get it over done with.
That's incredible.
Yeah, he's 11 to 7.
Absolutely done. Jollof rice or rice and peas?
Rice and peas.
Neither. I'm carbohydrate. I have to digest that,
You're
baby.
You're going to have to have one of them.
Really?
Yes, you're going to have to have one of them.
Rice and peas, a Belgian woman.
There you
Here
go.
we go.
Okay.
There you go. Nuclear power or fossil fuels?
Fossil fuels.
Interesting.
Okay.
Quality or quantity?
All quality.
Okay. Youth or experience?
Experience.
Okay.
Don't say to my young girl though. You need experience.
Academia or apprenticeship?
Ooh, 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 ooh.
I mean, it depends.
Apprenticeship, I would go.
Yeah.
I would.
Apprenticeship.
Okay.
It's a route that I went down.
Yeah, me too.
Sustainability or low cost?
Sustainability. We're so
Pri-
we're such
pri-
women, aren't we?
Pri-
Don't I think?
private or public?
Private.
Private.
Okay.
YouTube or Netflix?
Netflix.
Choose
Netflix.
one.
Netflix.
There you go.
Okay.
Neither.
Brick and mortar or online?
Brick or water.
Brick and mortar?
Brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar, okay.
Okay.
And the last one is city or countryside?
City.
Huh? Well, no.
Don't say what you're gonna say. It doesn't matter what anyone else says. Say what you're gonna say.
Back yourself on that one.
Yeah.
No, I'll go city. And the only reason why I said that, because I was thinking countryside, because I want to sleep right now. But city, because I love the hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And that's it.
Amazing.
Thank you, guys.
We like.
Amazing.
I'm actually really impressed with this, you know. And you know, it's so like, I mean, I live in my own little bubble of work. Like, I'm just doing my thing, but never really get into like black understanding of like businesses, what goes on, and how people are. Because when you're in your bubble of just creating,
Yeah.
you just go with the flow, and you never have that time to sit and talk, or to individual, because you just take it as a your everyday conversation. But then when you actually find a space and you sit down and you talk about it, and it's really bizarre, because I was saying to a friend of mine, "Oh, I'm going to go to this, this podcast. I mean, it's all about black businesses," and they were like, "Oh," and I was like, "Why? Ooh,
Yeah.
right?" But they actually had me thinking, because I was thinking,
Yeah.
like, wow, like we have to make it a thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the thing that everybody is afraid of
Yeah.
exploring.
It's awkward.
Absolutely.
It gets awkward.
It gets awkward, because then you don't want to make yourself look like a problem, but then you have to create an understanding. And I think that's the bit.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think we have to understand, if on a simple scale, other communities ensure their situation is set by having these kind of discussions, by having this togetherness. Not saying every community is perfect, but they do that, and I think we don't do this enough.
Yeah, I think it's perfect.
I think
100%.
I think as well, and there's always an aspect of us culturally. I think that we've all have this aspect of trying not to be an issue, trying not to be a bother, and I think we mix that up with actually this isn't trying to be a bother. This is empowering, ensuring, celebrating. All these things are not problematic, and we can't. We need to not make ourselves as small as possible. In fact, we need to make ourselves as big as possible.
Because it's really bizarre. Because I was saying to Marcy the other day that our delivery guy
It's good. It's worth to have this story.
that sends, like, becomes my house regular, because my daughter's been getting her stuff, and he's like, oh, I think he was from either Kosovo or I don't know, Corfu or something like that. But anyway, he's saying to me that, please don't be offended if I say this to you. And I'm like, no, it's fine. He said, I thought you was either the cleaner or the babysitter, because he thought to himself, how can I live in a house like that, and have a car like that, and actually be in this area? And he was saying, look, it took him a while, because he's trying to work me out how many times I've been there. And he said, you work really hard, and at first I was like, oh my gosh, like, how did he come to this conclusion? But I had to ask him the question, and he was just saying that because he was a delivery person himself, and he had to work so hard, and he was saying, I know what it feels like, because I'm an immigrant too. And I was like, hold on, hello, I was born in Great Britain, like, I'm not an immigrant. But for me, I was like, wow, this unbiased opinion, or racism, or whatever you call it, does actually stem from individuals actually looking at you and thinking, well, how do you get that? And I was thinking to myself, okay, so if I was a man and I was a black man answering the door, what would you say then? He's a butler? He's a, the mechanic?
No, but it's all of it.
What would
yeah,
it be?
it's
Do you know what I
all-
mean?
yeah,
And for me, I found that really kind of like really
Eye-opening.
astonishing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Especially if, as you said, it's
A cleaner
it's
or a
twofold.
babysitter.
It's
Yeah.
twofold for yourself, in that you're not just black, but also a black woman. So it's like, there's no way you could be successful and be a woman and be black.
Yeah.
How does that work?
And living in that environment.
Yeah, it's like, that doesn't make sense, because I'm working hard. So how can you possibly be doing better than I could, given your disadvantages, and you're like,
Yes.
because that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
That's what it seems.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
somehow
Yeah.
being those two things, you shouldn't be able to be in this position, like, unless it's through luck or something else. It's not.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
unfortunately,
there's no acknowledgement there is a black middle class. We're just,
Well, that's-
you know,
well,
that's-
you know,
yes,
we're
yes.
just
It's
Yes.
astonishing.
because of our parents,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
immigration,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that we are, and you know, I was sort of brought up with the whole good immigrant
Mm.
mentality.
Yeah.
Just fit in, put your head down, just
Yes.
get on, work
Yeah.
hard, work 5 times as hard, all of that
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's a generational thing, but I think it's really interesting with some of the new communities. They see that there is a, okay, well, you're an immigrant as well, but you've managed to rise up the ranks.
Yes.
Yeah.
The intersectionality that
Yeah.
exists with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, that's definitely.
I can say there's just a lot of blending outside where it's very, very obvious with us, clearly. And the whole narrative around it is what it is. It's the whole point where we have these discussions, the whole point we celebrate and share. And it's been an incredible journey so far to have even guests reflect on their own greatness and their own achievements and understand, as you reflect on these great achievements and your journeys, the impact that these stories will have on the wider community. So with that, I'd like to honestly thank you so much for sharing your time. Thank you for being here and giving.
Thank you guys for doing such an
Thank you,
amazing
guys.
job as well.
Thank you
Very,
so
very
much.
So.
It's an honor and a privilege to have heavy hitters like yourself
Yes.
down here, because we know every minute you guys have is very valuable.
Yes.
And I'm sure. So I know that for a fact. So thank you so much for
We
coming.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
That's been another episode of the BOLO Business Podcast brought to you by Camden. And we're signing out. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the BOLO Business Podcast. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. We encourage you to carry these conversations forward, share your thoughts with us on social media, and most importantly, apply the insights gained today in your own spheres of influence. Stay tuned for more compelling discussions that transcend boundaries, bridge cultures, and celebrate the richness of diversity. Please subscribe, share, and until next time, this is the BOLO Business Podcast.